Hello, listeners. Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to take just a moment to tell you about another show on our podcast network designed specifically for higher ed marketing leaders. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, hosted by Jamie Hunt, Chief Marketing Officer at Old Dominion University, has become an industry favorite. The show is sort of like a conference in a podcast, offering a blend of professional wisdom, innovative ideas, and personal anecdotes. Whether you're a higher ed marketer, a faculty member curious about the behind the scenes of university branding, or just someone with an interest in the intersection of education and marketing, the podcast is your gateway to the lesser-known narratives of higher education. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Mastering the Next, a cutting-edge podcast that explores the future of graduate, online, and non-traditional education through the lens of AI and technology. I'm your host, Dr. Ray Lutsky, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Element 451. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the thought leaders shaping the future of graduate enrollment management through technology. Mastering the Next is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that helps institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Workforce education has grown in popularity in recent years, initially propelled by the tightening of the job market, and then expanded by the pandemic. The need for companies to upskill, reskill, and incentivize their employees through educational opportunities has only become more urgent. Guild, a company founded in 2015 that is a leader in this space, builds programs to bridge the gap between education and employment, and partners with well-known corporations such as Walmart, Disney, and Hilton to support their employees' education. I'm joined by Mark Rudnick, Vice President of Learning Partnerships at Guild, to talk about the future of workforce education. Thanks for being on the podcast, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Ray. Excited to be here.
I have to start by asking what's next for workforce education in terms of future developments or innovations that Guild is working on. How are you thinking about digital transformation and AI in the workplace?
When I think back on even the last 5 or 7 years that Guild has been doing what it's been doing, so much has changed and evolved in this space. So it's been a really exciting time, I think, to be operating, to be working in the space for workforce education. You know, as I think about sort of where we are today and also where we headed, there are definitely a set of trends that I have seen emerging in the space, both I think in terms of what we're hearing at Guild from employers, but also in terms of what we're seeing in learner behavior and how we're trying to sort of evolve our offerings to meet those needs, those quickly changing needs over the course of time. I'd say one really big one is a general shift that we are seeing towards demand, both from employers and their employees in the non-degree shorter form credential space. And, you know, where that was only a relatively small percentage actually of our sort of total enrollment and volume, even just 18 or 24 months ago, that space is really far and away the fastest growing segment of our marketplace. And in response to that, there are a couple of things that Guild has been working on, both with our employers and with our learning partners, that I think is pretty exciting. I'll start with sort of the hot topic of the moment, AI and generative AI. As generative AI was really taking off last year, we launched a sort of perspective from Guild on how to think about skilling in that area that we shared with both our employers and with our learning partners. And as part of that, actually curated what we've called a bundle of programs to meet the needs of both the employer and the learner in that sort of quickly evolving space. And the reality is that, I think one of the things we have found as we've dug in is that different parts of the workforce really need quite different skills when it comes to AI and AI competency. AI skilling can and should probably be different, we believe, for someone who is on the front line or is a frontline manager versus someone who is a senior manager in the C-suite of the organization. And so as part of that effort, we worked with a set of our learning partners to curate a pretty broad set of offerings to serve those needs across the board, both folks who really have no context of what AI is or how to use it, as well as folks who are maybe more senior in the organization and are really thinking about how to leverage AI to really transform the work of the organization over the course of time. So that's been a really exciting endeavor. Another gap that we've seen in the area of skilling more broadly is in the area of what some folks have called soft skills. We've actually at Guild been using the term durable skills because we think they really represent things like communication, things like teamwork, time management. These are skills that are generally not taught in the classroom, whether you're in, high school or university, and they are in high demand. And we think they are also probably some of the skills that are least likely to be disrupted by AI, and most important in a world where AI becomes a more predominant part of the workforce. And in general, there's just generally not a lot of high quality offerings out there in this space that really focus on durable skills. And in particular, a very, very small amount of offerings that are really custom designed for the frontline worker, for the non-degree worker in particular. And so we've actually been working with a set of our learning partners to bring to life more programming in these durable or essential skilling areas, things like I mentioned, really specifically designed to help build some of those practical skills like communication or teamwork for folks that will be immediately practical on the job and won't require someone to take a 4 or 6 year degree in order to be able to attain those skills, but be able to get them in a much quicker and more efficient way.
And that's interesting. And I want to double click on that for a moment, Mark, because you're talking about working with learning partners and helping them do things that traditionally many higher education institutions are not good at, pivoting so quickly. And we've talked a lot on this podcast about how institutions are sort of looking for ways to incorporate AI, and it's very early days for still, depending on the discipline. And then you're right also about that soft skills piece. So how do you work with your learning partners to tailor educational programs to meet the needs of your partners and their employees?
Yeah, we at Guild, we take what we think is a pretty distinctive, very intentional approach to the design of how we think about sort of the learning solution, if you will, of what we offer to our employers and their employees. At the core of that is what we call the Guild Learning Marketplace. And that is a set of over 2,000 programs delivered by around 70 or so institutions who are really uniquely skilled at serving the working adult learner. And that's across a pretty wide spectrum of needs, Ray, from, we serve students from high school completion through degree programs, language learning, skilled trades, certifications, and boot camps, and across industries as well, industries like healthcare and financial services, retail, and manufacturing. And we take what we call a sort of managed marketplace model or approach in how we design our learning marketplace. What that means is that we tend to be quite picky about who we work with from a learning partner institution perspective. We have a rubric actually that we use that really evaluates the institution across a set of criteria, including things like their ability to scale, the quality of their offerings, and their ability to deliver really strong academic and career-aligned learning outcomes, the accessibility of their programs, and their ability to do all of that at a price point that really delivers strong return on investment for both the employer and the employee. And so when we talk with our learning partners, we really do think of them as sort of a unique breed, if you will, in some cases. And in actually a lot of cases, we have even institutions who have experience serving the working adult have often benefited from Guild support and consultation in how to serve, in particular, the frontline worker. That Guild is the predominant core learner of the Guild offering. And so we take a very intentional approach in sort of thinking about what's on the shelf, if you will, in our marketplace. And then we sort of take that overall approach. And then with each employer that we work with, we take a really sort of consultative approach with them and help them as they are joining Guild for the first time, but also over the course of time as they're continuing to evolve and think about their benefit and their strategic education program, and really help them craft a version of our marketplace that directly aligns to their specific business needs, their specific growth and transformation priorities, and their specific talent objectives. And so what that sort of nets out as is really like a solution that is comprehensive in nature, very broad in nature, but really ultimately custom built for the employer and flexible over the course of time as well for them to be able to expand offerings, at times contract offerings or augment offerings as their business needs change, as new programs come into the marketplace over the course of time as well.
It's very dynamic, and I can imagine on a case-by-case basis quite diverse. And the way you're curating your learning marketplaces, workspaces, your ability to work with employees to provide the skills necessary for their employers to get them where they want to be. It kind of double back on something you talked about around accessibility. So from your perspective, what has been the impact of your work, of online education on workforce development, especially in terms of accessibility and inclusivity? What has been the impact there?
Yeah, I super appreciate this question, Ray, just because I think it is often a topic that is frankly overlooked in the sort of traditional world of higher education. You know, I definitely think what I would call like the explosion of online offerings, the proliferation of online programs over the last, call it 10 to 15 years in higher ed has really helped to expand the aperture of what's available for folks. If you think about through the Guild context, both for those employees who maybe would have traditionally taken advantage of sort of a more traditional workplace education benefit program, but also really wholly new populations, I think, are getting access in ways that they weren't in prior periods. Guild, as sort of at its essence, was really founded on the belief that we could reimagine education and workforce investment to be much more accessible, to be much more inclusive and in nature, and really specifically to be able to support folks who have historically been underserved by education and particularly workforce education. Think about folks on the front line who have historically never really been part of the equation of an education benefit program like this. And I don't think that would have been possible without the proliferation of online offerings that exist today. I really don't. That said, I do think there's still quite a bit of traditional thinking in the higher ed space that I am hopeful that we'll continue to see evolve over the course of time. What at times can look like something to the effect of the same old program at the same price point, designed in the same way for sort of the quote unquote traditional student. And Ray, I don't think that's going to cut it in the medium to long term, to be totally honest. I just don't. And there are a set of providers, to be clear. I don't think the outlook is completely bleak. There are a set of providers absolutely out there in the country, both universities and non-traditional providers who are thinking differently and really designing for sort of what I like to call the new traditional learner, the working adult. And Guild works with many of those organizations today. And I still think there's quite a ways to go for the industry and sort of the space broadly to really think and design and deliver solutions differently in a way that is really uniquely tailored for this audience, this sort of new traditional learner and the working adult learner.
I like that, new traditional learner, because on prior episodes of this podcast, guests have remarked that there is really no such thing as a traditional learner in the traditional context that we've talked about. It's like the idea of the folks with some college but no degree,
Absolutely.
the folks who never had the opportunity to go to school, the folks who are thinking, well, gosh, I can acquire valuable skills without getting a degree. And how might I go about doing that to improve my situation? So going back to what you were talking about, tailoring these programs to meet the needs of the folks, if they're in retail, if they're in healthcare, whatever industry you're working with a client in, what are some of the challenges you face when you're implementing these programs across different companies, different industries? How do you overcome those?
Guild has dozens of employer partners at this point across a pretty wide variety of industries. And we've really intentionally designed the sort of core Guild offering to be quite flexible, to be valuable for quite a wide variety, both of companies and employees, as we've been sort of building out our offering over the course of time. And in particular, I'd say with a core competency in serving some of the largest employers in the country, particularly employers with very large labor forces and very large frontline labor forces. But that said, we do see that when we bring on new employers, and particularly new employers in sort of new industry verticals, that we've needed to expand and flex our solution to go as we have built to really meet those needs. I'd say maybe probably the best example of that for Guild is in the healthcare space. We began working with healthcare clients a handful of years ago. And when we did so, we found that their sort of core needs, and in particular, the needs around the really incredible talent shortages and gaps that they were seeing in their industry, in roles like allied health roles and clinical roles, nursing roles, that it was really absolutely essential for us to think differently and be able to provide a different type of solution that was really custom built for healthcare companies. And so over that period, over the last 3 years or so, we've really built out a customized solution targeted specifically at delivering offerings in those areas like allied health certifications, clinical nursing, not just the academic programs themselves, but really an end-to-end solution that really sort of creates an ecosystem between our learning partners and our employer partners to facilitate things like clinical placements in the right geographies. This is complex stuff. This is really challenging stuff. These are problems that are not unique to Guild, admittedly, but that doesn't mean that we've been satisfied with an answer of, that's difficult and therefore we can't help. And so we're continuing to look for ways to sort of expand our marketplace model and scale to hopefully make a dent in that space and in healthcare. And, I think the unique opportunity that we have is the ability to bring together those organizations, the learning partners and the healthcare clients, the healthcare organizations, and be able to really do that at a scale that traditionally has not really been a focus because of the complexity involved in that industry. So I think we continue to be excited. There's lots of avenues. We, as much success as Guild feels like we've had since our founding, we know that we're still really just scratching the surface of what's possible in terms of the employers that we can serve and ultimately the American workers that we can serve through them. So,
well, Guild has enjoyed some great success and in healthcare and other verticals. Could you share with us a success story or two of individuals or companies that have significantly benefited from the program you're talking about here, provided by Guild?
Yeah, love this question, Ray. We regularly share sort of student stories, both internally with Guild and with our partners. It's sort of become a part of our kind of core ethos and DNA as an organization. And I do think it really helps to ground, certainly I'll speak for myself, helps to ground me in the work that I'm doing and in the work that we're doing. Maybe I'll share a couple of individual stories and then actually a new partnership that we just launched in this last month or so that I'm super excited about. One student that is really like an incredible story. A woman named Sherry who works for Tyson Foods. She's based out of Enid, Oklahoma, and she actually came. We run a partner event every year that we call our Opportunity Summit. And it's really designed to bring together sort of all the different parts of the marketplace that we serve, the employers, our learning partners, and really help share and kind of expand the opportunities, tell stories about what's working really well in our work. And Sherry actually was on stage at our forum last year. She started at Tyson. She actually had a felony record, no high school diploma. And one of the reasons she chose to work at Tyson was because she needed an employer who, I think in her own words, was willing to take a chance on her. She became a young mom at 15. She had to drop out of high school to take care of her family. And through Guild and through her program with Tyson, was actually able to go back to school and graduate from high school through our high school completion program, and is actually now in the process actively of looking for what's next for her, looking for her bachelor's program that will also be covered fully by Tyson in its education program. And all along, as she's been sort of advancing along in her academic journey, she's experienced really tremendous career mobility. She moved from being a machine operator into a trainer, and now actually is hoping to move into HR over the course of time. And it's just a really incredible story. I'll tell you one other that's one of my favorites. A woman named Carol, who is an associate at Walmart and graduated last year actually from Southern New Hampshire University, which is one of our largest academic partners. Carol was, one of the millions of frontline workers who during COVID served as an essential worker. She was on the front lines working at stores during the pandemic and the height of the pandemic. In that time, she actually suffered 2 separate strokes, and at a certain point was told that she might never recover from her sort of medical ailments. She persevered through her own really incredible determination. I don't think there's any other way to describe it, but also through a really incredible support system that she built with her coworkers at her store, through her Guild coach. And she ultimately graduated with a bachelor's in business administration with a 4.0 GPA. And the sort of cherry on top of Carol's story, she wasn't able to make the in-person graduation in New Hampshire. And so to really honor her commitment and achievement, SNHU and Walmart and Guild arranged for actually a surprise delivery of her diploma at her store and sort of a personal graduation celebration and ceremony for her. And it was just an incredible moment for her and a really incredible moment for all those organizations to see the impact of what we're doing. And the reality is that there are tens of thousands of folks like Sherry and Carol who are out there. These are people who are overcoming incredible odds, who are overcoming incredible adversity to do what they do. And it's just a privilege. I think of it as a privilege to be able to get to go to work every day, knowing that we're having the opportunity to contribute to create success stories, to create opportunities for people, even in a small way. I'll say one last just new story that I'm super excited about. Just last month, Guild actually announced a partnership with Team USA to become the exclusive skilling partner and education partner for the U.S. Olympic team over the course of the next 5 years between now and the LA Games in 2028. And they just launched a benefit program, both for current athletes as well as former athletes. Really exciting, very early days for us, but such an exciting, back to your question, Ray, about sort of the diversity of populations and different types of, employers that we're serving. Sort of US athletes, hard to think of a sort of a better and more interesting set of people to be able to participate and serve over the course of time. So yeah, I continue to be sort of pinched by just how lucky I am personally. And I think how lucky we are at Guild to be able to do what we do.
Congratulations on that relationship with Team
Thanks.
USA. That's exciting and inspirational stories. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably as excited as I am to hear just the transformational impact on these folks' lives that it's being created through these workforce education partnerships. So that brings me to my last question, Mark. Use your crystal ball. What trends or changes do you foresee in the partnership dynamics between corporations and educational institutions in the coming years?
I think for a long time, Ray, there has been, and still is today in many ways, feels like there is a sort of artificial barrier between educational organizations and corporations that I think in many ways is really doing a disservice to both groups. I've spent my career, both at Guild and in prior lives, working with some of the most thoughtful and innovative and really forward-thinking educational institutions in the country, who I really do think are trying to grapple with ways in which they can think about how to reimagine their offerings and their way of delivering education to meet the needs of the workforce, to meet the needs of companies, and their employees, though much of higher ed remains relatively slow to change. And then I think more slow than probably many of us would care to admit. I've had the privilege of working with folks who are really on the front lines trying to change that over the course of time. And even while that's true, I think many companies are still looking to higher education. They're looking to the ecosystem. They're looking to leaders in higher education to help them solve the problems that they see in their own organizations, whether it's skilling or transformation needs that they have to be able to manage over the course of time. And one of the interesting things that I've noticed at Guild is that, in a way, each side is sort of looking at the other and looking for answers, when in fact, there really is no right answer. And so I think one of the unique opportunities that an organization like Guild has is to be able to bring companies and educational partners, educational institutions together into the same space in ways where we can really solution creatively and think differently. And there are so many big, meaningful problems to solve in the world, right? We talked about healthcare as a great example of them, but there are so many more. And so I am really optimistic that the folks who are on the leading edge of both sides of corporate and workforce thinking and education and transformation, and folks in higher ed are really have the right intentions. And I think it's about how do we continue to seek out the opportunities and create spaces where we can bring those folks together to work collaboratively and really solution differently than we have in the past.
Sounds like lots of changes coming. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Mark Rudnick, Vice President of Learning Partnerships at Guild. We appreciate you sharing your insights.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it.
The Mastering the Next podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Artis Cadieux, JC Bonilla, Mallory Wilsey, Brendan Henkel, Brian Gross, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.